Welcome back to All Souls Church. Good morning. Welcome to All Souls Unitarian Universalist Church of Braintree. Whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are on life's journey, you are beloved. And welcome to participate in this community as we engage in an ongoing search for truth and meaning. We hope you'll find yourselves at home here. My name is Linda Cousins, and I serve on the Board of Trustees and will be your service associate this morning. If you're visiting us for the first time or would like us to reach out to you, please fill in a welcome card found in the pews and place it in the blue basket by the door as you leave the sanctuary after the service. Assisted listening devices are available as you enter the sanctuary, and there are toys, books, and crayons in the back of the sanctuary for children of all ages. Since this is our first multi-platform service in the sanctuary, we ask that you remain masked and safely distanced throughout the service. Although there will be no singing in the pews, all are welcome to hum along to our hymns. After the service, everyone is invited to gather outside for conversation and refreshments. If you have not already done so, please take this opportunity to silence your electronic devices.
There, that's better. How good it is to be with you this morning and in this sacred space. I am the Reverend Beau Rivers, and I am delighted to be your new minister. Since I'll be wearing a lavalier mic this morning, I'll be unable to mask because the mask comes off, so does the mic, and it's too hard to put it back on. So I will not have a mask on when I'm not speaking, but I will be wearing a mask during coffee hour when we're outside. And so we begin our in-gathering service this year with a special message from our UUA president, the Reverend Susan Frederick Gray. And we ask for your grace as we combine our skills of in-person worship with our newly acquired skills of Zoom worship. And so there may be a few glitches here and there, but with a sense of humor, we'll get through it.
Hello, Unitarian Universalists. This is the season of ingathering, marking the start of a new congregation year. In recent months, as more people have been able to get vaccinated, many of us have been able to gather in ways that we haven't for a long time. It has been a joy to gather with distant loved ones, to hug our family and friends. And it's important to savor these gifts, these blessings. And we know that the pandemic is not over. Virus variants are creating uncertainty and greater risks for our children, the immunocompromised, and those who cannot get vaccinated. If you are eligible, please get vaccinated. This is the most important thing you can do to keep your loved ones, your communities, and one another safe. Getting vaccinated and continuing to wear masks remain a priority. And they help make our gatherings, whenever and whatever form they take, as safe and welcoming as possible for our children, for our elders, and for those most at risk. I share the feelings of frustration that we are not further along in combating this virus. And I know the heartache and confusion of trying to figure out how to best care for the spiritual nourishment of our communities while the virus surges. The way forward will be different across our communities. Rates of vaccination, case counts, ability to meet outside, quality of ventilation, ability to physically distance indoors, congregation size, and particular needs and risks of our staff, our leaders, and our members, all of these can vary, and all are important factors in planning how we gather. I'm encouraged, though. I'm so encouraged by the creativity I witness in our congregations and the way that we are all leaning into mission, remembering how much our families and elders need community. It's important to think outside the box and to experiment with ways of gathering, both virtually and in person, that are meaningful and that attend to safety. In this time of ingathering, this season of new beginnings, care, kindness, and patience for ourselves and others are needed in abundance. Remember to prioritize the values of inclusion and consent, centering those most at risk, and to follow the science and be flexible in making plans and changing them when needed. At its core, ingathering is a ritual that celebrates the value and the meaning of religious community, the ways that we are held by a wider circle of love and care. I invite you to take a moment to be present to your body, and the physical space in which you are present. Be open to the emotions that you carry in your spirit. And remember that you are not alone. We belong to each other. And even when we are apart, we are held by a greater love. We are held by a religious community and by people that comfort us and care for us and remind us of our connection to the larger interdependent web of which we are all a part. May we be grateful for the unseen but very real threads of compassion and strength, care and intention that surround us. There is great healing and sustaining power in our faith, and our work is to make these manifest in ourselves and in our communities, even if how we do this looks and continues to look differently than it did before. Our ministry is life-saving when it is responsive to our realities, helping all of us navigate these unprecedented and very precarious times. Thank you for being a part of this faith and for your commitment to your UU congregation. We will get through this together, caring for one another and being held by the larger embrace of abiding love. I send you my blessings to you and your loved ones and your families and to your communities. My love and care to each and every one of you. Blessed be.
The Board of Trustees and members of the Sunday Service Committee will be monitoring vaccination and infection rates here in Norfolk County, Massachusetts. As cold weather approaches, it will be very likely that we'll return to Zoom services due to inadequate ventilation in our lovely and historic building. Any change in venue will be announced in our weekly e-news. I just want us to pause for a moment that we light our chalice this morning in this beloved sanctuary for the first time since March of 2020, a year and a half. It is a tender and poignant time of being reunited in this space, across the miles and safely distanced across the pews. We are so grateful to be with you in person and from the comfort of your homes via Zoom.
The chalice words are by William F. Schultz. Come into this place of peace and let its silence heal your spirit. Come into this place of memory and let its history warm your soul. Come into this place of prophecy and power and let its vision change your heart.
If we could just wait for a moment, the chalices went out. The things we don't have to worry about when we're virtual. Will the lamp run out of oil? All right, let's try this again. Whew, there, now we're cooking.
Success. And the green candle. We light the green candle to affirm our commitment to caring for the planet that is our home. Please join me in reading the words to our covenant while remaining masked. We covenant to create a caring, affirming, and inclusive community that invites us to become our best selves.
19th century Indian mystic Ramakrishna tells us, "The winds of grace are always blowing, and it is for us to raise our sails." But how do we raise our sails when grace comes disguised as loss or failure or unwelcome change? How do we remain open to life, to love, and to the future when the present feels so uncertain and frightening? As we journey together this morning, we'll explore how we might raise our sails when the winds of grace are blowing. If you are joining us remotely, I invite you to sing along. And if you are seated in the sanctuary, I invite us to come along while Jacob plays our opening hymn, Wo Ya Ya.
We are going, heaven knows where we are going, but we know we're there, and we will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. It will be hard, we know, and the road will be muddy and rough, but we'll get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. Oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah, yeah. We are going, heaven knows where we are going, but we know we're there, and we will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. Whoa, yeah, yeah, 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 whoa, yeah, 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 whoa, yeah, 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 whoa, yeah, 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 yeah.
Our call to celebration this morning is by Mamie P. Harmony. If on a starlit night, with the moon brilliantly shimmering, we stay inside and do not venture out, the evening universe remains a part of life we shall not know. If on a cloudy day with the grayness infusing all and rain dancing rivers in the grass. We stay inside and do not venture out. The stormy, threatening energy of the universe remains a part of life we shall not know. If on a frosty morning, dreading the chilly air before the sunrise, we stay inside and do not venture out, the awesome, cold, quiet, and stillness of the dawn universe remains a part of life we will not know. If throughout these grace-given days of ours, surrounded as we are by green life and brown death, by hot pink joy and cold gray pain, and miracles, always miracles. If we stay inside ourselves and we do not venture out, then the fullness of the universe shall be unknown to us, and our locked hearts shall never feel the awesome rush of being fully alive. Blessed be. We do have a lovely song coming. There it is.
I'm gonna open my heart and say yes, yes to life. Like the crocus growing up through the snow. I'm gonna open my heart and say yes, yes to life. Like the frozen lake cracks with the flow. I'm gonna listen to the tender voice deep down in my heart. I'm gonna nurture it and follow it free, for my heart waits to dance in this body of mine, and my life wants to make love to me. I'm gonna open to the truth that every dream that I dream can be filled here and now in my time. I'm gonna open to the truth that these feelings can fly beyond what I imagine can be mine. I'm gonna listen to the tender voice deep down in my heart. I'm gonna nurture it and follow it free, for my heart waits to dance in this body of mine, and my life wants to make love to me. I'm gonna open my heart and say yes, yes to life. Like the dewdrops that shine in the sun. I'm gonna open my heart and say yes, yes to life, and feel that my life's just begun. I'm gonna listen to the tender voice deep down in my heart. I'm gonna nurture it and follow it free, for my heart waits to dance in this body of mine, and my life wants to make love to me.
Our transcendentalist forebears who lived right here in the greater Boston area taught us there is as much divine beauty and wisdom in nature as there is in the written word. Perhaps that's why New England Unitarian Universalists traditionally take July and August off to enjoy the long, warm days of summer, to gather with family and friends, to gaze up at the night sky in wonder, or to commune with nature in places that may be near or far, familiar or foreign, yet dear to our hearts for the awe and appreciation of life they inspire. So as we begin each new church year, we take a moment to reflect on our time apart and to celebrate our coming together with our traditional in-gathering water ceremony. Water cleanses and hydrates our bodies. It contains and produces nourishment, and when we enter it, water holds us in an embrace that leaves no part of us untouched. Since our bodies are nearly 50% water, it makes sense that human beings have always considered water to be a sacred source of life and healing. So members and friends are invited to collect a sample of water from a place that has touched us deeply, and to pour it in this common bowl which represents the many sources of our faith community. And there are pitchers on either side of the bowl for anyone who did not collect a water sample or may have forgotten to bring it with them to church this morning. So all who wish may participate. When the ritual begins, I'll invite you to form a line down the aisle closest to you and come up one at a time to pour your water into the common bowl. You may do so silently, or you may come to the microphone, tell us your name, and what this water in particular has meant to you. If you would like to participate in the water communion, I invite you to come forward masked and safely distanced at this time.
Hi, my name is Don. I'm going to drop some water into the bowl in honor of our new hot water heater. We spent 4 days without hot water. Yay. Now I know what those third world people feel like.
Hooray!
Good morning. My name is Mark. We have water from the Atlantic Ocean. We went down to watch the horrific Hurricane Henri and down to Nantasket Beach and so gathered some water during that while we were watching the waves and the wind.
And we also got to have lunch at Jake's.
Hello, my name is Linda, and my water is from Glacier National Park in Montana. Truly, truly one of the most beautiful parks. And it's the first time I was able to fly, and just to be able to go to a place like Glacier National Park is just felt like freedom.
My name is Kathy. My water is from Hull, from my new home with my spouse, Patricia. We've just moved back to back to Massachusetts from about 15 years in Washington, D.C. And Patricia from Washington, D.C. via South Africa, which is her home.
Hello, I'm Diane Doucette, and my water donation is symbolic of all the beaches that I enjoyed all summer long, the beach being the most favorite place that I ever want to be at.
My name's Lauren McGrath, and I'm so happy to have a beautiful community where I had a great jacuzzi to enjoy and I could swim even on the cold days.
Is there anyone joining us remotely who would like me to pour water into the common bowl while they speak?
Yeah, water represents the rain from the summer. Having grown up in Texas through a 7-year drought, I appreciate the rain.
Yeah, I just wanted to say our water would be from the Atlantic Ocean also. We are so blessed to enjoy it right here in front of our house.
I have a sample of rain as well from that 5-inch rainstorm we had a while ago. So I'm seconding George's thankfulness for having the water, and especially for the forests and meadows that can't be watered every 2 weeks like we do at home.
Thank you.
I will add our water, and it is from our tap, from our house that has been our sanctuary through this crazy, unprecedented time. And we have enjoyed our house and redecorated more times than I can count, and are very happy where we are.
I would like to add this water. I went to Daytona Beach the first time, a little symbolic there. And where did we go? We went to the Keys. We went to the Everglades. So I'd like a little, all those waters added to it. Great memories. Great memories.
And I'm bad at saying names. I'm Alicia. That's Nikki. Thank you.
As our separate lives come together in the blending of these sacred waters, may we be inspired to renew our commitment to one another, to grow in love, strive in peace, and live in hope. For in love, all things are possible. Blessed be. Now, we have a story for all ages today, and I know we're all older children, but there's nothing like oral storytelling. This morning's story is The Frog Race, which is a Hindu tale. One day, there were 5 tiny frogs who were bored and decided, let's have a race. Whoever reaches the top of the mountain first is the winner. So they decided to have a race the very next day. While the other animals from the forest gathered round to see the race, one frog decided to take a mud bath to protect her skin from the sun. When everyone was ready, the frogs lined up and Rabbit blew the whistle. The tiny frogs started leaping toward the mountaintop. Ga-boing, 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 ga-boing. But right from the start, the other animals of the forest were laughing at the frogs. Running beside them, they yelled, "You're just tiny frogs. Frogs don't climb mountains. Frogs belong in bogs." Without paying any attention to them, the tiny frogs just kept hopping along until one of the forest animals said, "You're too small. You'll never make it." And just then, one of the tiny frogs got tired and pulled out of the race. A short time later, Another forest animal said, "Are you crazy? Be reasonable. Quit while you're ahead." And soon 2 more frogs quit the race. And just when one of the forest animals said, "You'll hurt yourself if you don't stop now," one of the tiny frogs collapsed from exhaustion and never raced again. But the last tiny frog continued hopping up the mountain. And even though her legs were tired and her lungs were hurting, even though the other animals were yelling, "Save yourself! No one will blame or shame you if you turn back now." But the tiny frog was determined to finish the race. In fact, even when the oldest animal in the forest said, "In 7 generations, no frog has ever reached the top of this mountain," but the tiny frog just kept hopping. And when she finally reached the top of the mountain, the forest animals gathered around her in amazement and said, "Didn't you hear us?" And that's when the tiny frog realized she couldn't hear anything because she still had mud in her ears from her bath that morning. She thought the other animals were cheering her on. And all she could hear was the mountaintop calling her name. And so our story this morning reminds us how important it is to surround ourselves with people who support us whenever we try something new or different. Each week, we take time to share our important joys and concerns, so all of us might help carry the burden and join in the celebration. If you wish to acknowledge a sorrow or joy from your heart, I invite you to come forward while remaining masked and socially distanced to light a candle or to drop a stone in the water. And you may do so silently, or you may come to the microphone, the same one we used for the water ceremony. Tell us your name and briefly share. Spirit of love, we lift up those who may be ill, facing terminal illness, continuing to be separated from their loved ones, who may be struggling financially, who may be needing our love and care. In Spirit of life, we give thanks for the many blessings we have received in our lives, for lighthearted birthdays, and for gathering in this space, and for the 9/11 victims and their loved ones. It may be 20 years ago, but it still feels like it was just yesterday. And we probably all remember where we were and what we were doing when we received the news. And so we extend our love out to all those who may have lost a loved one. May their memory be a blessing. Blessed be. And now for all that is spoken and unspoken, let us take a moment of silent meditation and prayer. Please join me in singing or humming hymn number 123, Spirit of Life.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of love, come to me, come to me.
How blessed we are for the gift of music and how it can transport us. Thank you both. Our reading this morning is by Mark Nepo, and it's an excerpt from Sugar in the Tree. As a boy, Nepo writes, I spent many hours on a 30-foot ketch my father had built. When the sea would get rough, I would go below where the noise and motion of the deep would pound the hull, and every toss and lurch would feel sudden and pointed. Finding me there, my father told me how sailors, when feeling seasick, have always made their way on deck to look at the horizon. While that doesn't prevent the pitch and drop of waves in a storm, it is somehow less upsetting if the larger context is kept in view. I have kept this wisdom close to me, Nepo writes, when pitched in the storm. In truth, whether facing cancer or riding the insecurity of repeated rejection, or trying to surmount the most profound moments of loneliness, my greatest pains and fears have been lessened when I've managed to keep the largest sense of life before me like a horizon. This is the difference between despair and faith, between the narrow point of doubt and the long view enough to sustain all life-giving possibility. It seems we suffer more when huddled below. And though the eternal perspective, the horizon of all time and all life, doesn't remove us from our storms, it does make things more bearable. In ways that truly matter, what is of ultimate value is always in the horizon. And faith is making our way on deck despite our pain. Blessed be. Each week we have an opportunity to give thanks for the blessings we have received in our lives and in our church community. Our offering is a chance to give back in support of the work and outreach of our church. At this time, our morning offering will be electronically given and received, and any in-person offerings may be placed in the blue basket by the door after the service. She was the oldest of 22 children when her mother died in childbirth. Unlike her sisters who married at the age of 15, my grandmother chose to avoid her mother's fate and remain single. Now she was left to tend the farm and raise her siblings while her father worked as a lumberjack in the deep woods. Over time, some of the older children raised the little ones as their own, and she reluctantly married a persistent suitor. This was the norm in Canada during the 1800s. To attract European immigrants to the harsh and densely wooded region of New Brunswick, the government subsidized large tracts of land and awarded a subsidy to the head of household for the birth of every child that lived beyond a certain age. After the birth of her fourth child, my grandmother recognized her body had become a commodity to her husband and her country. Perhaps dreams of a better life helped her endure the long periods of isolation while her husband was away, or his wanton behavior when he returned. For she knew deep down in her heart that a woman's worth is greater than the pleasures of her womb or the labors of her womb. She strengthened her resolve when her husband returned from the woods that winter, and her heart cried out, "Pas un autre enfant," not one more child. And once he was asleep, she sat by the fire and wrote with determination to her brother, "Meet me by the river on the night of the next full moon." When the time was right, she woke the two older children and bundled up the little ones. She grabbed her wool coat with the youngest in her arms, looked back on the life she created with her husband, and closed the door behind her. She followed the children out to the barn where she had hidden a hope chest of provisions for the journey. She strapped the chest to a sled, threw a horse blanket over it, and sat the youngest child on top. The older children followed along as they made their way down to the river to meet her brother. Hesitant to help a woman leave her husband and concerned for his sister's well-being in a foreign country, her brother reluctantly agreed to guide them safely across the St. John River. Once in the U.S., she swore him to secrecy as they hugged goodbye. She let the children play briefly in the snow while she watched him start back across the river. Perhaps she was worried for his safety, or wondered if she would ever see him again. Perhaps she wondered how far she would get if he did not keep his promise. Or perhaps she simply did not anticipate the pain of separation as she slowly turned her back on her country to collect her children, make her way to the train station, and embark into the unknown. When she got off the train, she adopted a new surname from a mailbox and declared herself a widow to avoid the threat of detection and deportation. When her sister refused to give her and her children shelter, she walked through town until she came upon an abandoned storefront. She convinced the owner, who was an elderly widow, to accept what she could afford for rent. She made beds for the children on the stockroom shelves and converted the storefront into a small cafe where she served breakfast to the single men who worked in the factories. My grandmother was a resourceful businesswoman who also capitalized on the sale of bootleg whiskey during Prohibition. And survived the Great Depression. as a single parent. She purchased 3 homes in her lifetime with cash on the barrelhead and earned an uncommon respect among the men and women of her day. My grandmother's story is a legend in our family. She's like the tiny frog who held fast to a vision of hope and made it to the top of the mountain. Patrick Overton once said, "When you come to the edge of all the light you know and are about to step off into the darkness of the unknown, faith is knowing one of 2 things will happen. There will be something solid to stand on, or you will be taught how to fly." My grandmother's story continues to inspire me as I fulfill my call to ministry. As the youngest of 4 and the only girl, my brothers were a lot like the other animals in the forest who tried to discourage me from entering seminary. "Are you crazy?" they asked. "Why incur such debt at this stage in your life? French people are not too bright, you know. Women can't be ordained." I was raised Catholic. "You're a lesbian, for crying out loud." After several conversations with me, they logically concluded I must be going through a change of life. And I couldn't agree with them more. The spiritual awakening that preceded my call to seminary dramatically changed my life. And for that transformation, I am profoundly grateful. When we are asked or feel called to release all that we hold dear, it's important to hold fast to a vision of hope. Rebecca Solnit says, to be hopeful means to remain. To be hopeful means, to be hopeful means to be uncertain about the future, to be tender toward possibilities, to be dedicated to change all the way down to the bottom of our hearts. I believe grace happens when our hearts are open and we remain tender toward the possibilities. Sometimes the winds of grace may take us to unexpected places that may enrich our lives and prepare us for what lies ahead. When I compared the cost of seminary to my undergraduate education 30 years prior, I nearly pulled my application. But instead, I raised my sails. I called my minister. I called the school's financial aid office. I thought if there was some way I could defray the cost of room and board, I could afford to pay the tuition. We agreed I should sleep on it before making my final decision. And shortly after we hung up, the financial aid officer forwarded an email from a faculty member in search of a live-in caregiver for her mother in exchange for free room and board. The address was a 5-minute walk from my school. The winds of grace are always blowing. Louise was a delightful 93-year-old woman who had recently broken her hip. She was a former educator who mentored me in many ways in that first year of seminary. And halfway through my first year, her health declined and she died the following summer. During that time, I learned a lot about dependent care and hospice services. Halfway through my second year, My own mother was diagnosed with metastatic cancer at the age of 87. She wanted to die naturally in the comfort of her own home, so I took a leave of absence to be her live-in caregiver. I could not have guided my family through the dying process if I had not cared for Louise the year before. The winds of grace are always, always blowing. Other times, the winds of grace assure us we're not alone. I remember a time as a social worker when I got in my new car and noticed I had a flat tire. The roads were wet. It had been raining heavily. I was all dressed in these white pants for an important meeting at the hospital. And I wasn't at all familiar with my new car. I remember feeling overwhelmed and tearful until I got out from behind the steering wheel, raised my sails, and got out of the car. A man I recognized as a client was walking down the street toward me. He was a religious man diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. He refused treatment and generally avoided people, talking only to himself in ways others seldom understood. So I was surprised when he stopped walking and stood beside me, looking at the flat tire. He said. He asked me if I had everything I needed, and then he apologized and told me he couldn't do it for me because he had a hernia and a bad back. But he offered to stay with me while I called AAA. Well, in fact, I didn't have AAA. But in that moment, a man with a seriously debilitating psychotic illness became lucid enough to give me everything I needed to change the tire myself. And that was the assurance that I was not alone. When I was finished, he helped me put the tire in the trunk, something he could have not done on his own without injuring himself, and something I certainly could not have done alone without getting my clothes dirty. When I told him I could not have done it without him, he said, "Don't thank me, thank the man upstairs. I don't know how to do any of this stuff." He gave me his blessing and continued on his way down the sidewalk, talking nonsensibly to anyone but himself. And in the 15 years that followed, he was never that lucid with me again. Though he always gave me his blessing. Saying yes invites a universe of possibilities to present themselves before us. When we raise our sails, we prepare ourselves to catch the winds of grace and all the possibilities that may come with it. But how do we raise our sails when grace comes disguised as loss, failure, or unwelcome change? In metaphysics, the element of air represents spiritual energy. And according to Hebrew scripture, creation began with the divine breath, or ruah. Biblical scholars note how the pronunciation of the divine name, Yahweh, incorporates the breath as we inhale with the first syllable and exhale with the second. Yahweh, Yahweh, Yahweh. Is it any wonder then, when we are frightened or in despair, a loved one will always remind us to just breathe. You'll get through it. Like the one who goes below deck when the seas are rough, we succumb to our fear of the unknown or to those who would discourage us. Our chin drops to the chest. Our breath becomes shallow, and we see only the ground beneath our feet. And when we are gripped by fear or sorrow and confine ourselves below deck, where the air is stagnant and stale, it's impossible for us to make decisions relevant to the horizon. To move forward, we must raise our heads, fill our lungs with fresh air, and remain tender toward the possibilities that await us. And by focusing on the breath, we remain present. And that's where the magic of possibilities resides. Not in the past, not in the future, but right in the present moment. Possibilities that have the power to help us see the blessings in the challenges as they come before us. And so, if you feel so moved, I invite you now to practice raising your sails with me by taking a few deep breaths. Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When we raise our sails, we prepare ourselves to catch the winds of grace. With one hand on the tiller and a vision of hope in our hearts as true north, we are better equipped to navigate the changes on the sea of life. May the winds of grace bring us ever closer to all that is good and life-giving in our lives and in the life of this community. Blessed be. I think that's the first time I get applause after a sermon. Please remain seated and join me in singing or humming our closing hymn, led by Don Swanson and accompanied by Jacob Clapper.
Though below me I feel no motion, standing on these mountains and plains, far away from the rolling ocean, still my highland heart can say, I've been sailing all my life now, never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue home. Sun, my sail, and moon, my rudder, as I ply the starry sea, leaning over the edge in wonder, casting questions into the deep, drifting here with my ship's companions, all we kindred pilgrim souls, making our way by the lights of the heavens in our beautiful blue boat home. great winds urging me on. Greet the infinite sea before me. See the sky, my sailor's song. I was born upon the fathoms, never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home.
Thank you. May the peace of the flowing water be with us. May the beauty of the starry skies be with us. May the warmth of companionship be with us. And may the miracle of this world in all its fullness bless us. May it be so. And as we extinguish the flame of this chalice, may each of us carry its light into every day of our lives. Blessed be.
Debussy's piece, which is listed as Prelude number 3, translates as "The Winds on the Plains."
Just a few announcements before we leave. Just take a moment to review the back of your order of service for upcoming events and services. And next Sunday, the September 19th, is going to be a multi-platform service with Reverend Beau. And the following Sunday, September 26th, will be virtual-only service led by Reverend Denise Colley in Wisconsin. Also on Sunday, September 26th, there'll be a celebration of life for Judy Ranny, and that's going to be at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And if you're able to help with the arrangements for this service, please contact Joe. And please remember to recycle your orders of service as you leave the sanctuary. And I think Roger has one that you wanted to make.
I would like to mention our resident master artist, Michael Domina, will be participating in Open Studio in Hull next Saturday and Sunday. The time will be from 10 to 3 o'clock.
Thanks, Roger. And also on the 25th, there's going to be a potluck here starting at 6:30? 6. Starting at 6 o'clock on the 25th, potluck. So see you all then.